Coca-Cola Norway allowed us to challenge them. We made them look at whether they could replace all their fossil-based bottles with plant-based bottles. This is now a reality. Coca-Cola Norway are global frontrunners on this issue, and I'm so pleased to welcome General Manager in Coca-Cola Company, Scott Vitters.
I make airplane models, or sometimes I'll go to Latin conventions, you walk around in togas. Well, the plant bottle is really, it's like an ordinary plastic bottle. It looks like one, it feels like one, but it's made with up to 30% plant material. Basically what it is it's using plant waste from sugarcane, and one of the two molecules to make PET, they take the molecule from the sugarcane, so it's a renewable resource and it helps to lower the carbon footprint. My mom's really environmentally conscious, like she drives a hybrid car and we always recycle our bottles. She's really concerned about the environment and like what the future is going to be like for lower generations. She provides me an example of what I should be like. I mean, she works really well with others and she's really smart and she works hard, and I feel like if I act like her, I could be almost as successful as she is right now, because I mean, she just invented a bottle and I think that's really great. And like, just following in her footsteps I think would be a good idea.
When I'm working on this project, I think same as everybody. I really feel I'm not only working for the Coca-Cola company, it's really working for the planet, and for all the consumers, they will have a choice when they pick up a plant bottle, they open the happiness, and they feel good about themselves. They can do something better for the environment, one bottle at a time.
I can say that my mom invented a bottle and that she's like one of the greatest people I ever known.
Well, hello, Norway. Thanks for making it this whole day. It's been a long day, and I know I'm between you and a beverage break, which being in the beverage industry, that's never a good thing that you want to do. I've got to admit that I had a little bit of a debate in terms of deciding how I wanted to present on PlantBottle today. One side of me really was focused in terms of the message that I think Daniel conveys very well of talking about the technology and talking about our excitement around having the only plastic that is made with plant-based material that's fully recyclable and can meet the majority of the functional needs of our products. It truly has us on a pathway in terms of a zero-carbon, closed-loop solution for delivering product into the marketplace that can meet the desires of consumers. But I looked at the attendance and the speakers that you have today, and I thought a little bit that that might be just a little bit narrow for a number of folks in the audience, and that perhaps a broader message and discussion might be appropriate for the ZeroConference. And so really what I started looking at and what I'd like to talk about is how we're taking this technology and being able to scale it. How do you make it at a commercial scale level? Thomas Edison has a quote that the power of an innovation is in its use. It's great to have technologies, it's great to have ideas, it's great to be piloting environmentally beneficial technologies, but if we're not putting them into the hands of billions of consumers around the world, then truly we're not realizing the value of that technology. And if you're not familiar, our commitment with PlantBottle technology that 100% of our packaging by 2020 will have our first generation PlantBottle packaging material inside of it. It's not too far off, and when you consider the fact that we do 3,500 different products, we sell 1.8 billion 8-ounce servings a day, and 60% of that volume is delivered in PET packaging. That's a lot of scale, and so hopefully what I wanted to do today is just share just a few learnings in the 10 minutes that I have here of what we are doing in terms of being able to advance this technology and make it a reality into the marketplace. So today there is an added cost for us to use PlantBottle, and that's not a cost here in Oslo that you would be paying. We're not passing that cost on to the consumer. And for a fairly heavy productivity-driven company, that's a pretty big statement in terms of an investment behind this technology platform. What really fuels that, though, is the business case that we put forward to our leadership that didn't come from an environmental strategy to start. It really came about a decade ago as we were doing our long-term strategy for sustainable growth, for the entire growth of the business, looking out the next 20, 25 years. And as we were doing that, we saw continuing desire from consumers to have the functional attributes that PET packaging provides: lightweight, resealable, shatter-resistant, highly recyclable, and being able to be recycled again and again or reused. But we did see some caution signs, some concerns that were out there from our business standpoint. One was around cost and looking at the variability of future price as it related to non-renewable fossil-based materials. Another was around trust, and consumer trust both on solid waste issues, but looking at climate issues in regards to the material itself. And then finally, from a marketing perspective, looking at brand love and seeing people perhaps like the package, but really emotionally connect and drive the brand not being as strong as we'd like to see it. And for that, in terms of those value drivers, guided us in terms of innovating around PlantBottle and really coming up with what we believe is a solution in terms of being able to address all three of those value drivers. And I'll say from an innovation perspective, within any innovation, from a very simplistic point of view, I would challenge that when you look at cost, trust, love, if you're only driving against one of those three values, I'm not sure it's good enough in terms of advancing into the marketplace today. If you can do against two, probably a pretty good program worth looking at and investing behind. If you've got three that you believe you have the potential in terms of delivering, to us, that is more of a transformational technology that is worth it, at least from a Coca-Cola perspective, of putting a sizable investment and driving forward. So when you look at any innovation in the marketplace, but in particular disruptive innovations, one of the big challenges that tend to get faced is the length of time before you get to a payback period. And I think the challenges in particular when you look at environmental innovations is that you have the potential to disrupt a bunch of parts of the value chain that perhaps will no longer make that innovation as sustainable as you might have hoped. Now what you're looking at is a very simplistic diagram of PET plastic. So starting from a fossil-based source, there's two core ingredients that make up PET plastic. I swear this is the only science lesson within this presentation deck. Two key ingredients that come together to make the plastic that then gets converted into a bottle and then delivered and used, hopefully by you, and hopefully at the end in terms of being able to recycle that material again and again. Now in the biopolymer innovation space, what's been interesting is there have been a whole host of new polymers that come into the marketplace, but the challenge with many of them is that while they may be made with plants, hopefully sustainably sourced, and perhaps resulting in a lower carbon impact, they gave rise to new issues. So at an end-of-life solution, the lack of recycling or an appropriate end-of-life option for being able to manage that material. And I'll be honest, many of the polymers that we looked at over a decade ago not only didn't hold carbonation, but literally didn't hold water as it resulted in terms of on the shelf at the end of the day. Hardly a sustainable offering within the marketplace. And so from an innovation perspective, what we did is we actually put some constraints on our innovation. We said there are some things we're not going to give up on. That at the end of the day, in terms of any innovation within the packaging space, it had to deliver on quality and functionality for the consumer. Long term, it had to look at cost competitiveness, and it had to be reusable or recyclable. And we put those purposeful constraints. And by doing that, what it did was drive our innovation back to PET plastic. And I think there's a lesson here in terms of while there's opportunities to do blue sky thinking, and from a Coke perspective, we always start at the beginning by challenging ourselves of why do we need the package in the first place? It's a sizable amount of the cost. I'd love to get rid of it, but I haven't found too many consumers at the end of the day that will allow us to pour our products into your hands. If you will, we'll be able to provide it that way. In the meantime, we've got to deliver it in some packaging format. And so as we got driven back to PET plastic, what was exciting to us is that we discovered a new way of moving forward, and that you could look at sugars to be able to replace the ingredients that would keep most of the value chain intact. And so instead of needing to build the entire value chain for the polymer, all the way down to the container and recycling industry, that we could literally just focus on one ingredient source, make the exact same resin. The only difference with the resin is if you do a carbon-14 dating test, you can tell that it comes from new carbon instead of from dinosaurs ages ago. And so we got pretty excited about this potential, and we knew that there was a commercial technology that we simply needed to build the supply chain out to be able to make that a reality. And then we looked even further and we said, we think we have pathways, and we've known it since we first introduced PlantBottle in 2009 for being able to do that other ingredient, although we have some additional R&D work in terms of being able to make that commercially viable into the marketplace, for which we're doing now. So again, I think a lot of opportunity for blue sky thinking, but at times it's helpful to go look back inside the box, and that in terms of really being able to drive to scale, some of the opportunities may be looking on the inside. So there's lots of discussions around strategic partnerships or collaboration that takes place in the marketplace, but those aren't always easy. And in fact, in terms of putting those into practice can be quite a challenge. Couple lessons in terms of from the PlantBottle program to date. I have the good fortune in terms of being able to come out and talk about this technology platform, but it's actually a whole host of other people that do all the heavy lifting. I get to come and do the good stuff in terms of talk about all the exciting work that's being done. In some measure, my job at Coke is to run a dating service. So my dating service that I run is making sure that I've got procurement and supply chain talking to marketing, and marketing talking to communications, and communications talking to R&D, and legal, and legal, and legal, and legal, and legal, and everybody all working together. This isn't typically how we've operated within our business system. In fact, only within the last handful of years have we taken dedicated general managers with cross-functional teams to be able to advance what we consider to be breakthrough technology platforms for our business. And I can tell you it's making a world of difference around making that investment. And I'm thrilled to death in terms of the folks that I have working to advance our PlantBottle program. Another interesting idea on partnerships is about a year after we had introduced PlantBottle into the marketplace, we went to our senior leadership and said, guess what? We just have consumers and stakeholders beginning to understand what PlantBottle is. We have this exciting proprietary technology. Now we want to give it away to the world. You can imagine that there were a few puzzled looks around our decision in terms of doing that, but what we let our management know is that we needed to redefine what winning would be in the sustainable innovation space. There's the obvious question of around, if you just hold it to yourself, are you truly going to be able to create the scale of change that we expect through the technology from the environmental perspective? But there's also a core economic business perspective. Even though Coke has a lot of scale, for suppliers to make the kind of millions and billions of dollars investment that's going on to be able to build out this technology, simply depending on a single company, can be a bit of a struggle, particularly in today's capital markets. And so what we knew is if we could not only communicate our interest in enabling others to be able to come to this space, but actually play a role in bringing other companies along on this journey. And you can see the picture. Our first public partner was Heinz, which started in the United States, now have ketchup containers in Canada, and are continuing to build out in other markets as well. And we're working in terms of with a host of other partners that start to get highlighted with some interesting partnerships, stuff that we've now done in the R&D and innovation space. Because what we started to discover as we were building this program out is that, one, we weren't the only one interested in terms of moving to this space. And secondly, reminding ourselves that PET plastic, the kind of plastic we use, are part of a much bigger universe that's made up of polyester. So what we're talking about creating change is not just that bottle or that container, it's your clothing, it's your seats, it's the inside of your car, it's your carpet. If you're in a cubicle, think of all the applications and ways that PET plastic may touch yourself, and this technology platform is relevant for that as well. we actually have created a formal collaborative with the companies that I have highlighted there to work together and say, hey, let's share ideas, let's challenge ourselves, let's look at ways in which we advance the technology to be able to get to a 100% renewable, fully recyclable package into the marketplace even sooner. And then finally, and arguably the most important side, the foundation of PlantBottle has always rested on a promise of being able to deliver improved environmental and social performance, as well as ensuring that we don't compete with food. We have had a long history in terms of advancing our life cycle assessment research, working with credible third parties. We know this just can't be Coke out there saying this is a good thing. There isn't the trust in the marketplace of ensuring that. And so working both with academic partners, whether it's EFOI out of Germany, Imperial College London, Michigan State University, Unicamp is in Brazil, of doing more of our traditional life cycle assessment metrics, but making sure we're pushing even further to look at things like water use. But then also being very clear that simply moving to plant-based materials isn't inherently better for the environment. I think we've all learned that. And I can tell you, as one of the largest sugar users in the world and a large user of starch, one of the fastest ways for me to lose my job is to be disruptive onto sugar and starch markets around the world. We have an inherent interest of making sure that we do this right in terms of the selection of plant-based materials. And so whether that's through first generation or increasingly our sizable investment from an R&D perspective, looking at second generation feedstock materials, perhaps even feedstocks here in Norway, we're working with a host of partners to be able to ensure that we continue to do this work right and to be able to do it transparently. So I'm going to wrap up here saying that this definitely is not a pilot, that we're making this real. I'm very excited to be here in Norway because Norway was the first and is the only market that has 100% conversion. Every Coke plastic bottle that you touch here in Norway contains PlantBottle packaging material. This is a very active program. I've got 27 countries up there because when I submitted this presentation, it was 27. As of last week, Peru introduced, and now we've got 28 countries, and we're up over 18 billion bottles in just a few years, well on our way toward reaching that destination of having 100% of our packaging contain our first generation PlantBottle packaging material. Really appreciate your time. I hope I have the opportunity. I'm going to be around tomorrow to talk with some folks, maybe highlight the technology some more. And a big thank you to you and to Zero, importantly, and their support on this journey. Take care.